Selamat pagi, Bapak Ibu peserta webinar FTA. Selamat bergabung dalam Zoom pada pagi hari ini. Mohon ditunggu sebentar karena para narasumber baru persiapan. Kami informasikan bahwa webinar pada pagi hari ini ada dua bahasa. Nanti untuk bahasa Indonesia ada translatornya. Bapak Ibu bisa memilih di sisi bawah ada gambar global interpretation. Nanti bisa dipilih mau menggunakan bahasa Indonesia atau bahasa Inggris. Begitu dari kami, terima kasih.
Fintech is one of the fastest growing sectors of the modern economy, not just in Singapore but globally. It is recognized as a major factor in the fourth industrial revolution. And it will change the way we transact with one another without the need even for a central processing agent like banks. So Fintech is a combination of the words financial and technology. It involves the innovative use in the design and delivery of financial services and products. And this includes technology like blockchain, mobile internet banking, and it all can be transacted just through a phone. The education sector is a big market and ready for transformation, if not disruption. The increasing application of internet and mobile delivery systems, data analytics, AI, all these will radically transform the education landscape. Fintech demands a mix of skills that incorporates technology, financial services, innovation, and it has to be very customer-centric. Developing a competitive edge while industries are being disrupted, jobs automated, will be a challenge if we do not keep up with the times. In education, as we prepare our students to be future-ready, educators must be cognizant of how technology is transforming the world. Otherwise, we will fall behind. Let's build a seamless learning environment that provides the nexus between theory and practice for engaging our learners, as well as to prepare them to be future ready. If you want to learn more about Fintech,
sign up at Fintech Academy.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Selamat pagi Bapak, Ibu, dan rekan-rekan semua. Saya melihat beberapa wajah yang familiar dan beberapa yang belum saya kenal. Saya ingin memperkenalkan diri saya. Nama saya Sulat. Saya akan memandu berlangsung webinar ini. Selamat datang di acara webinar kali ini, sebuah webinar series dari Financial Technology Academy atau Fintech Academy atau disingkat FTA yang bekerja sama dengan RGB dan Indo.Events. Ada 4 webinar direncanakan untuk tahun 2021 ini, yaitu pertama digital banking, kedua fintech in healthcare, ketiga environmental, social, and governance atau ESG. Yang keempat adalah future of fintech. Telah hadir bersama kita para speaker, baik dari Singapura maupun Indonesia yang memiliki banyak pengalaman global. Bapak, Ibu, dan saudara saya sekalian, diskusi-diskusi di webinar ini akan banyak yang menggunakan bahasa Inggris. Bagi yang ingin mendengarkannya dalam bahasa Indonesia, silahkan klik papan di bawah halaman Zoom ini. Klik interpretation, kemudian klik bahasa Indonesia. Anda akan mendengarkan suara Maura yang menerjemahkan acara webinar ini. Baik, boleh dicoba sekarang, Bapak, Ibu, dan rekan-rekan sekalian. Sudah? Nanti kalau Anda ternyata lebih suka mendengarkan yang bahasa Inggris, silahkan pilih off. Oke. Baik, kita teruskan ya. Webinar ini akan dibuka oleh 2 keynote speaker, yaitu Dr. Pumpida Hidayatullah, Bachelor Engineering, PhD di IT, Managing Partner di RGB, dan juga Dr. Lilianto, PhD, Founder and Chair of Fintech Academy Singapore. Kami persilahkan Bapak Pembida untuk menyampaikan sambutannya. Silahkan Pak Pembida.
Terima kasih Pak Sulat. Izinkan saya menyampaikan dalam bahasa Inggris. Good morning everyone. My name is Pumpida Hidayatullah from RGV. Thanks for attending this first of Fintech Academy webinar series. I'm so excited to present speakers recommended by our principal, Fintech Academy of Singapore. Special thanks to Dr. Lilian Koh for her support and cooperation, so this webinar series shall take place accordingly. We, RGV, are proud and honored to be Fintech Academy's exclusive partner in Indonesia. I'm hopeful that this webinar will open up visions of the attendees to the world of fintech, specifically the digital banking sector, as the corresponding title of this first webinar. As I understand it, in digital world, innovation is happening faster and more advanced by the minute. It would shape up the new way of life of mankind. With such fast-growing industries, new challenges shall rise. Hence, new type of risks are required to be mitigated. Fintech Academy is committed to build up a pathway to best practice in the digital world. We believe that its success shall be on the human factors involved. With competent and well-mannered human resources, any digital platforms shall provide proven digital welfare. We see that the future needs to be built based on this philosophy. That's all from me for now. Have a good webinar. I hope that you would all enjoy it. Always stay tuned with us. There will be more interesting topics to come in the upcoming webinars. All the best. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Terima kasih, Pak Pembida. Sekarang kami persilahkan keynote speaker kedua untuk menyampaikan sambutannya. Please, Dr. Lilian Koh, unmute the mic to present your notes. The mic is yours now.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are so happy to be with you today. And thanks to our wonderful partners and friends in Indonesia, we are now at the same event and we will do more together. I'm Dr. Lilian Koh, founder of Fintech Academy in Singapore, and we are so pleased to be able to do this Fintech literacy so that all of us will be kept informed on what's going on. There is so much going on in digital banking. So today we are doing a very important topic that is happening, but some of us are still not quite well informed. So what is digital banking? Digital banking will go beyond your mobile banking or online banking. We have seen progressive banks are already doing that. So the traditional banks are already into mobile banking, online banking, but what is interesting about digital banking is we will go into AI, artificial intelligence, automation, security, and we will adopt the best practices whereby you have this customer experience along with other trends that technologies will enable companies to be both very efficient because it's automated and very customer-centric. So in that case, you find that there will be more than just going online and just going mobile. These are sometimes called neobanks, and some people call it challenger banks. So if you carry on and look at the next slide, you will see that we are moving into this world whereby we cannot run away from it. So it's either you meet up with a challenge and you embrace technology, or you'll be left behind. So we can see this difference about what started as digital disruption has now become digital transformation. All right. So when you have digital banks, you find that these new banks, new type of banks, are doing it differently. All right. If you care to find out about what's happening in Europe, in America, in London, and even in some ASEAN countries and Indonesia itself, you'll be surprised that so much has happened. So that's digital banks and digital banking. So there is a difference. So you find that all these critical discussions that we are going to have, not just today, but for the next few webinars that we have organized for you, will take us through these compete or collaborate. All right, so that's quite important, right? So if you find that it is so good a solution, then join in and find out what are these fintech challenger banks doing right? How can the brick and mortar traditional banks either do it themselves or partner a challenger bank to do it? There are lots of software as a service in the industry, but that's not all. What is important and what drives it is reimagining this customer experience. How can organization reimagine and develop the next gen customer experience for today's consumer as well as our next gen? So you find that later our speakers are going to show you what has happened the couple of years till now and what's coming on board in future. All right. And yes, my chief executive of Fintech Academy, Bernard, who has got 17 years of experience with our big banks in Singapore and is now helming Fintech Academy, he will take you through on this introduction on what's Fintech. And the next speaker, yes, he will cover that. The next speaker is Joe Tusi. Joe is a wonderful friend, and some of you might know him. All right, he's a big name, CEO of Change, and he has this digital payments company all over the world. And guess what? He does remittances so smoothly that even I have to trouble him to do my remittances. All right. And Joe is a wonderful and principal training consultant of Fintech Academy. And today he's going to talk about problem with statements, financial crimes in payments, and he's going to lead you into understanding what is blockchain technology that enables all these digital currencies to be moving freely. He loves to use the term free money. So let's hear from Joe later. Next we have is a very, very a very, very seasoned banker and with lots of experience, and that's none other than Nikhil Ratnam. Nikhil has been in the whole space of all these disruptions, transformations, because he was in New York. He was in the New York bank watching all these happen, and he was doing a lot of new initiatives. And we are so lucky to have Nikhil with us today. So without further ado, I'm going to open this conference so that all of us can learn from our very, very experienced speakers. But guess what? If you stay with us right through, all right, next week, we are going to give you links to the wonderful platforms, wonderful webinars, Singapore Fintech Festival. So stay tuned and we will give you the links to attend our wonderful events we've lined up for you in Singapore. And after that Singapore Fintech Festival, we will continue with our webinar series for our Indonesian friends. So on the 20th November, mark your calendar, we are coming back with more. Likewise, 4th of December as well as 18th December, please block your calendar and keep yourselves informed. Okay, and without further ado, I shall now hand over the session to Pak Sulat. Thank you, Pak Sulat.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ko, for your inspirative notes and introduction. Ya. Akhirnya kita akan masuk dalam acara utama kita, yaitu diskusi panel yang akan dipandu oleh moderator kita, Bapak Lasio Lukito, ST, MCP. Beliau lulusan dari ITB dan juga dari MIT. Ya, silakan Pak Lasio.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Sulat. Selamat pagi Bapak Ibu peserta sekalian. Saya Lastio, saya akan memandu panel discussion ini. Saya akan melakukan saya akan memandu dalam bahasa Inggris. Jadi saya mengingatkan kembali bagi yang baru masuk atau belum mengklik, bila mana perlu translation ke bahasa Indonesia, tinggal klik bagian interpretation di kanan bawah dan pilih yang bahasa Indonesia. Selebihnya bisa pilih off atau English. Oke, dan saya katakan sekarang ya, mumpung dalam bahasa Indonesia, kalau ada yang nanti ada pertanyaan, silakan juga memakai fasilitas chat room kita. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you and welcome to today's webinar. Pak Pumpi and Dr. Ko already introduced us to this webinar and to the world of fintech. I think many has been said, and I don't need to explain more. Yes, this is the first out of 4 discussions throughout this 2 months. So please stick with us for the final 3. But today is on digital banking. We have today 3 distinguished speakers from Singapore, and one is actually located in the US. And again, introduction was already done by Ibu Lilian Ko. And you may have seen we will see their profiles later on in the discussion. The 3 speakers will definitely bring us international global insights into the financial technology. And the first session, or the first speakers, we will follow the path that Lilian, Dr. Ko introduced. Our first speaker will be Bernard So, who will bring to us digital banking. And our second speaker will be Mr. Joe Tusin. Mr. Joe Tusin will provide us with insights into payment gateways, and the interesting sides of fintech. And our final speaker will be Nikhil Ratam, MBA, sharing with you insights on crypto as the driver of digital banking. Dr. Bernard So is currently Chief Executive FTA, or I should say Bernard So, Master in Business Administration, MBA. Bernard, he's CEO, Chief Executive of FTA Singapore, and he's been with the Academy for quite a while, it seems, and he is now also the executive committee member of the Singapore Fintech Association. So 17 years and a member of a fintech association that will, of course, bring us a lot, I hope, Bernard. So the mic is yours, Bernard, for the next 10 minutes, please. I give the mic to you, Bernard.
All right, thanks so much, Palacio, and good morning, everybody in Indonesia. I'm going to share my slides, a very quick agenda. Very happy to be here and honored. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. I'm going to talk about digital banking in the region, and these are my three agenda for the day. First of all, I'm going to show to talk through some of the key reasons for the emergence of digital banking and digital banks. As you can see, and Dr. Koh has mentioned earlier, there's a lot of buzz in this space. I believe in Indonesia, there's a lot of digital banks that's being introduced in recent years. And then second part of my sharing will be about how the financial institutions, the banks are responding. And ultimately, what's the impact to all this disruption? What does it mean to bank employees or even management? So without further ado, I'm going to talk through very quickly and share some insights on some of the key reasons why all this for the emergence of digital banking and digital banks. First of all, there are four key reasons. And first of all, of course, there's an advancement in technology in this space, empowering all this, like what Dr. Koh has mentioned, AI, machine learning, data analytics, all these are powering all these fintechs or even digital banking to be made possible. And of course, with all this technology in place, if there's no consumer uptake, it will be useless as well. So I'm going to share more insights later on about how the consumers are behaving, what's the changes in recent years. And then we also see a lot of competition spicing up in the fintech space. There's a lot of investments pouring in as a third pillar. And of course, the regulators are very supportive of this, and many central banks in the region, including in Indonesia, are also very supportive to create a very innovative landscape to promote digital banks, to promote fintech, and bring more value to the consumers. So first of all, in recent years, we've seen a lot of advancements in technology. I believe most of you, we have a smartphone. So traditionally, a lot of smartphones were used for when it first came about. People are using for e-commerce, for maybe checking emails in the earlier days. Subsequently, it became e-commerce, and you start shopping on Amazon, Lazada, and many online platforms. And subsequently, over the years, people started to become more comfortable using the smartphone to do trading, investments trading through the brokerages, and you do a lot of online trading. And all these are made possible because consumers are equipped, more open to all these smartphone technologies, 4G, 5G, making the speed even faster. And of course, within the technology space, we saw big data, like Dr. Koh has mentioned, a lot of data flowing, a lot of systems are connected. In fact, the fintechs are doing it quite well in this space. They have a very good systems to understand customers and predict what customers may need using all this data, using our day-to-day data, and then dish out a very personalized solutions for everyone. AI, obviously, it's very critical in this space as well. Algo trading, in fact, if some of you are familiar with trading, there's a lot of fund managers or even in retail investors using AI, algorithmic trading, starting your own positions to buy, sell, trade, or for portfolio management. So all these are coming together. Of course, there's blockchain, most popular, non-popular. A lot of people have the misconception about blockchain equals to Bitcoins, but there's many more. Blockchain can be used in this space, and it's really disrupting and improving, I would say, financial institutions, the way the processes are lined up. The connectivity is made possible. So advancement in technology has been a very critical component, spearheading that. But of course, as I mentioned earlier, if all these high tech are here and consumers are not ready, they are not receptive to using all this 5G, upgrading to 5G subsequently, or even using giving that data to the banks. So it wouldn't have been made possible. So the consumers, we saw a lot of changes in consumers' behavior as well. Incidentally, COVID has expedited the whole, accelerated the whole consumer adoption. We saw across the region, people, because of the lockdown, people are staying at home. They are unable to travel out, or they are working from home. So as a result of staying at home, they start to do more online shopping, or you start to watch more Netflix and online movies. or even going to your lifestyle is changed as well, going to TikTok for entertainment, and even Deliveroo, and food panda, and so many food delivery services has also saw a spike. Consumers are increasingly more open to digital banking, and during the lockdowns, in fact, a lot of consumers they are worried about going to branches. Even old folks we have seen old folks also starting to use online banking as a result, because they are so fearful about entering a branch for fear of COVID and etc. So in the consumer space, there's a lot of things that's changed. As I mentioned, COVID-19 has caused a lot of acceleration in certain sectors within the digital space. E-commerce, naturally, I believe most of you would have shopped, buy some sort of things online. There is a spike, during these 2 years when COVID-19 was there, based on some of the stats that we've seen. Though the lockdown has impacted car hailings, right? As very few people are going to office, but there is a spike in food delivery. So we see Grab food, and even there's a Deliveroo having a surge in food delivery services across the region. Online took a hit, as we can't travel anymore. But online media saw a spike. The growth has always been there, even without COVID. But with COVID, yes, accelerated. But what does it mean for banking or for the financial institutions? What we saw is there's a setback in lending because the banks, the business is impacted. But from the investments and insurance space, there's a lot of adoption online. A lot of banks are engaging their clients through digital banking, providing online trading services to the clients. They can purchase online insurance online. At the same time, payments and remittance, we see a lot of consumer using online payments, during this COVID season. And maybe just some numbers to really show the trend for digital financial services. The trajectory has been very, very promising since 2019 to 2020. We saw remittance flow increasing 43%. And this trend, the remittance flow is going to increase over the next 5 years. And I guess perhaps later Joe is going to share more about the flow, the remittance, and then lending books. Online lending books is also increased everything. Within the banking space, there's a huge adoption, and all these stats are all for online. And insurance, we saw a spike in annual premiums. 2019, 2020, there's a modest increase, but this trend is going to triple by 2025. And even within the investment space, the AUM as under management for clients using online to do investments, it's also expected to grow four times over the next five years. So consumers, the stats have shown that consumers are very receptive to online banking, online investments, online insurance, and this has also fueled banks to keep developing more digital capabilities to sell investments, insurance, and remittance online. And maybe just a glimpse about the fintech landscape in Singapore. Powering all this, banks can't build everything. And there's a lot of fintech in this space. This is a landscape of Singapore. Within the fintech landscape, there are many verticals, credit cards, robo-advisors for doing wealth, peer-to-peer lending, I think is a big thing in Indonesia, remittance, insurance tech, insurtech, payments, personal finance, and digital banking. So all this, within the fintech space, there are many verticals supporting banks. Some fintechs were actually competitors, but I would say most of the fintechs out there, they are actually helping banks to streamline their processes, to engage their clients better. So this is an overview of the fintech landscape in Singapore. I believe you guys would have some sense about how it looked like in Indonesia. In fact, some of these logos you might be familiar to you: Grab, Stashaway, and so on and so forth, or Revolut as well. But what expedited digital banking or promoted digital banking is a double-edged sword. There were instances whereby fintechs were disrupting the bank's business in the business space. We saw that companies like Grab has also went into do fintech, Grab Finance. They serve a lot of providing microloans to businesses. the underserved segment that the banks are not traditionally lending to. And then there are other companies that, like, for instance, funding societies. There's some innovation in this space. They do supply chain financing. So what it means to banking clients, is they're able to use their invoices or future payments to collateralize to the bank to this fintech, and they are able to take it as good and give a loan to this. So all this innovation, it could be seen as disrupting the business banking business, or to some, you may argue that it's actually serving this pie that banks traditionally do not lend money to. So it's really up to a matter of perception. But of course, as all these fintechs start to grow in size and asset under management, the robo-advisors, like what I shared earlier, investors are pouring to this space. Currently, there's a lot of hot money out there. Everybody want to bet on the next unicorn. We've seen a lot of investment flows, from global venture capitalists, the VCs, over the last 3 years, and this is the trend. There's a lot of investments, hot money pouring into this space, especially during 2021. This year, first quarter, there is a spike, almost more than double the flow, and the trend is expected to go higher and higher. There's so many unicorns identified these days, transfers wise, and even Grab is going IPO. So there's many things that's happening and spurring this the fintech growth in this space, and all these are actually promoting digital banking. The consumers, the technology is there. The fintechs are here to help or compete, and hence the investors pouring in. And it's going to be more exciting, and especially when the fourth pillar is actually the key component, and the regulators, the central banks across the region, not just Singapore, are very receptive. They know fintech is the way the whole fintech landscape will change, will help banking evolve further. So the regulators have actually made it easier to do business for small startups, innovative startups to grow. They try to provide a very good nurturing environment for them to be bigger. Some policies were also changed as well to make it what traditionally, if you for StashAway, to have a fund license, you need more than 200 million in Singapore to manage, and then there is certain very stringent criteria. But to promote robo-advisors to actually grow, the policy have softened to encourage that, and regulators, not just in Singapore, are actually trying to promote this, and they've seen a lot of value all these fintechs and can bring to the consumers, and they are trying to innovate and provide a very innovative environment to foster this growth. This is an instance in MAS, our central bank in Singapore. There is a provision for digital advisory services. So in fact, this is actually very recent, in 2018. They are exempted from traditionally, if a fund manager comes into Singapore to launch a fund, they need track record. StashAway, robo-advisors like StashAway, they're so new to this space. They do not have an AUM at all. They're giving out, they're starting the service to clients for $1, to start investing. So it's impossible for them to even start. But regulators have actually reviewed this space and make it lower the criteria and try to make it easier for all these robo-advisors or even fintech to come into this space and expand their reach. And of course, we've seen regulators across the region in Singapore has also been promoting friendly competition, I would say, to make sure that all of us can bring value to the clients. They have in Singapore just last year, they have introduced 4 digital bank license. We've seen Grab, we've seen C Money coming into this space, trying to apply for the license, and then also there's an open market API. Open banking to promote this competition in this space, and likewise in Indonesia. I'm sure you guys are familiar. There's the regulators, Shopee. We've seen C also going to Indonesia space trying to acquire banks, and all these are trying to push up the landscape in this space. So, but how are the banks, the FIs, the financial institutions responding? They're facing an Uber moment right now. We've seen some banks like Standard Chartered Bank in Singapore. They have a strong branch network already, but they also went ahead to apply for the digital bank license to compete. They have done this in Hong Kong, in Singapore. In Singapore, they did the same. And of course, many banks those who are not applying for the digital bank license, they have stepped up their digital transformation efforts, dishing out more and more digital capabilities to engage the clients. DBS is very forward in this space. I'm sure you guys have read from newspaper, and they have a lot of innovation in place. So that's one area. And of course, the banks can't build everything. So there are many good fintechs out there who are willing to collaborate with banks. Their services, their assistance is actually to service banks. And banks, for instance, like OCBC Bank in Singapore, they actually adopted a lot of, partnered with a lot of fintechs, like for chatbot, AI chatbots, for machine learning, and so on and so forth, to help them engage the clients better. So we saw a lot of partnering in this space. And consumers are also getting very demanding. When they download an app, I believe most of us here, we will think twice, is this app going to have only one function or many functions? And as a result, banks, they're trying to evolve to beyond, they're trying to increase their proposition to the clients. It's not just banking. It's okay. They're moving to their lifestyle to talk about buying cars, properties, leisure, education, and so on and so forth. So banks are also trying to enhance their whole ecosystem, their banking propositions to go in deeper to the consumer's lifestyle and engage them better. And I just want to leave with 3 slides. As a result of all these changes, even Singapore and across the region, there will always be more technology going to be introduced along the way, more and more. So increasingly, not just banking stuff, employees have to adopt a digital and growth mindset. Because every time there's a new technology, we have to learn and learn and learn. It's not just a banking thing. Our clients in the business sector are also doing some form of digital transformation in their factories, in their shops, and their employees also have to learn all this to accept change. And organizations, as more and more companies started to adopt AI, machine learning, the structure have to will be changed to optimize the whole AI use case, so that we will see more and more cross-functional collaboration within the business. So it's not just you doing sales or operations. Everybody come together and use AI to build a strong use case and optimize it. So organization structure we will see some adjustments here and more. And of course, data is a new oil. A lot of times, companies, seniors to the junior staff, they will use a lot of data. And so this transformation takes place. A lot of decision making in the future will be based on data. It's not about how much experience the boss have or the junior staff have. They'll all be reading the same data, interpreting it, and make the same decision to go forward. And that's why data analytics, data storytelling will be the key change within the organization space. And with this, I'd like to thank you so much for your time to listen in. We're going to share even more. It's going to be a journey. Today's a start. We're going to share a lot more about all these insights in this space that we have covered, and stay tuned. And thank you so much. And over to you, Pak Lasio.
Thank you, Bernard. We've gone past quite a bit from your time, so we're not going to do any discussion for your part, but I let you go through because it's important for the participants to see all your slides, because it's putting the pace and the foundations for this discussion today. The panel discussion is on digital banking, and the 3 final slides are very interesting. Bernard, it's what effects it has on the employees, on the system, the banking system, and all. Maybe we'll save that for our further discussion or the Q&A session, Bernard. So we're going to go now to our second speaker. We have with us Joe Tusin. Joe is actually in San Francisco now, Joe, right? And I hope you've had your nasi padang dinner, Joe. Because that's one of his favorite foods. So when he's here in Jakarta, then let's all invite him for a nasi padang. Okay. So Joe Tusin is founder and CEO of Cinch. Joe is it's a digital payment company based in San Francisco. I don't know how long have you been in San Francisco, Joe? Is it just recently, or how long have you been there? Joe. Oh, never mind then. Joe, are you with us?
His mic is mute.
Yeah. His mic is.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind then. But make sure that. Hello, are you with us now, Joe?
All the way from San Francisco. Joe, you're on mute.
Okay, you're on mute, Joe.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, you're here. You're still in SF, right? Okay, so we'll just carry on, Joe. I'll just make sure that you get your nasi padang when you're here in Jakarta. So,
okay, good. So
tell us more about what is so interesting about payment system, payment gateways, and crime. I heard something about crime here. Tell us more about that, Joe. Okay, go on. The mic is yours. 10 minutes, Joe.
okay, good. 1 second. So I'm gonna share my slides.
Mm-hmm.
And so then just let me get there. Share my screen.
Yeah, are we there yet? Can some of the technical guys help, please? So Joe is located in the San Francisco Bay Area, right? Joe, you're in Berkeley. Joe is in Berkeley. Is also the research director at the University of California in Berkeley, a management consultant at Price Waterhouse-Cooper, PwC, and he also holds a senior executive position at technology companies such as Microsoft and HP and startup companies as well.
Okay,
are we okay with the presentation? Oh, I know. Bernard, can you stop presenting first? Joe, please present now.
Okay, 1 second. I am trying to give myself access to. Okay, here we go. You can now see my screen.
Yes, we can. Can you?
Okay.
Can you? Yes, that's correct. I was going to ask that. Carry on, Joe. Thank you.
Good. So I know I have 10 minutes, so I'm going to stay sharp and focused. My name is Joe Tusin. I'm CEO and founder of Change. We're a payments company. We're based out of Singapore, but recently we've moved to San Francisco to the US because we've run the payments business in Singapore for about 2 years now, and I think we know enough that we feel that we want to embark on the largest market in the world, the largest GDP. So we've just recently gone to the US. I think we are moving to exciting times, and we'll be sharing more of our experiences with you in the coming. You know,
you're breaking up.
What your bank about, and I so want to. Yes.
You were breaking up.
And then, so I want to remain. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. I'll continue.
So, I'll speak slower, and I want to just remain focused on payments. So first of all, let's. I'm going to speak English, but I've tried my best to make the slides bilingual. And so the problem with payments today, there are three things, right? One, it is slow, it's expensive, and it's difficult. And meaning that, you know, when you do cross-border payments, international payments from Indonesia, and you trade with Vietnam, you know, in Asia or Europe or the US, when you make payments, it always takes 2 or 3 days for the payments to arrive. So it's slow, and it's expensive, right? There are a lot of bank fees. There are, you know, foreign exchange, which you don't really see, but there are also a lot of hidden charges, so that when you send money to, let's say, to Singapore, your recipient in Singapore will also pay a fee. And, you know, people get surprised, like, why wasn't this, you know, why didn't you tell me from the start, right? And the other part is difficult because there are a lot of compliance issues. You have to share a lot of information to make sure that, you know, this money is not from corruption, you know, it's not dirty money, right? So there's a lot of complexity with payments. So the solution is digital payments, and that what we call IFS, right, which is instant, free, and safe, right? So instant is basically moving away from banks and running on blockchain. Right? So we've talked about this, and you'll hear more in the next session with Mikhail. And that, you know, with blockchain, it is decentralized, and that it is, you know, there's trust built in, and so when the payment is registered, you know that it is true, right? And it happens, you know, relatively instant, within minutes. And the next thing we want to do is that we want to make the payments free. And so people will ask, so how do you make money, right, if it's free? So free, we mean that it is free of bank fees, and we'll make money a little bit from the FX, right, from the foreign exchange, so that you will, so it's small, it's a volume, and it's enough for us to keep the business going. And the last part, which is simple and safe. And so that, in terms of compliance, which is just so complex, how do we use technology? How do we use smart systems to make the decisions for us? And I'll talk more about this, right, in the next slides. So just remember, IFS, instant, free, and safe. And that, so today we're talking about digital banking. We'll digital payment tokens and CBDC, central bank digital currencies. They'll be covered a lot by Mikhail, and I want to focus on e-money or wang elektronik. Yeah. Whenever we do payments, they always talk about money laundering. So I just want to touch this, right? This is a whole subject on its own, but just remember that when you do payments, and especially when you do cross-border payments, you must always think about financial crimes. And even though that you're a good person, the person that you're sending to, is a good person, there's always that, 1 or 2% that has financial crimes. And because of that, all transactions are being monitored by the banks, by the United Nations, by many, many agencies, right? So the three things that you want to think of is that there's money laundering, terrorism financing, and scams, right? So just think about this, just keep these three things in mind whenever you do payments, right? And then, but I'm not gonna go deep dive into this. So just remember them. So this is the main part of payments, and about my presentation today is that moving from left to right, how does money move from someone who is a sender, the pengirim, yeah, to the penerima, the recipient of the funds, and all the things that happen in the middle. So in Indonesia, if you want to send to, let's say, Singapore or to Europe or to the US, right, the process is the same. So if you're a sender, you go to you can go to a bank, but typically you will go to a remittance company, and it could be in a shop, right, in a mall, etc. And so this remittance shop, who is licensed by Bank Indonesia, and they will process your payments for you. They'll take your money, they'll ask you who you're going to send it to, and then they'll collect all the money, and then they'll go to a bank, right? They go to BRI, for example, or BCA, and then they'll say, okay, all this money, please send to Europe. All this money, please send to the US. All this money, please send to Singapore, etc. So on the other side, right, could be Singapore, for example, seluruh dunia, and then it'll go to a bank, and then you will then make a decision as to where you want to send it to. Who is the recipient, the penerima of the wang, right? So this is the traditional way of payments. Oops. And in fintech, you always think about, the banks, they're so expensive, they're so slow. How do you remove the banks from this process, right? And one of the ways, the possible ways, is through blockchain. And that using blockchain, and you can go direct from your payment processor to your recipient and not go through the bank. So blockchains, the many, many examples are on Ripple, are on Stellar, and also within Change, we are putting together a blockchain solution, a DeFi solution, decentralized finance solution, to make these digital payments so that it is IFS, it is instant, free, and safe. And the last part that I want to share with you is that on the recipient side, whether it's delivering money or delivering goods, right? If you're delivering T-shirts or shoes, right, or handbags, it's always about the last mile delivery, right? And that in money, you will want to be able to send it to a bank the traditional way, to an e-wallet, a dompet electronic, or to an agent for a cash pickup. And this is always talking about financial inclusion, because not everybody has a bank account, right? But they always have a smartphone, and then, or they're near an agent or a shop to pick the money. So in terms of digital payments, there are three main types of digital payments, right? So on the left side is the traditional cash, right? So I have, rupiah in my wallet, and then I just take, 10,000 rupiah, 1 miliar rupiah and for payments. So how do we digitize this? So there are three main ways. One is e-money, which I'll talk more. And then there is DPT, digital payment token, or token pembayaran digital, or the Bank Pusat Wang Digital, central bank digital currency. So number 2 and number 3 will be covered by Michael in depth. So I'm just going to touch about one, right? Because I just have 10 minutes. So in e-money, basically you have an ecosystem dompet, right? So you start off with the customer, and I go to a shop, and I buy something, right? So I buy some, nasi padang, and a drink, right? And so I pay using my wallet. And so now the toko has the money, but it's not in a bank, right? It's in a wallet. And then he can go to the suppliers, because he needs to buy things for his shop. He needs to buy, sapi, beli ayam, right? Sayur, and so that he can make his nasi padang. And so he pays through the wallet ecosystem. And then the supplier, right, will pay the people through wages, etc. And it becomes a closed loop, right? So that is the ideal way. But, there are different wallets. Sometimes the wallets talk to each other, maybe not. Sometimes there are definitely banks that are involved. But the wallets are trying to be standalone, and there are many large wallets, right? In Indonesia, OVO, Link Aja, etc. And it's because many Indonesians are not banked; they don't have a bank account, but they always have a phone, and then the phone they can always download a wallet for payments. So this is just using e-money, right, in Indonesia. But what's happening next is that your e-money in Singapore is going to be able to be used in other countries. So if you have your wallet and it is using certain standards, when you go to Singapore or Thailand or to Malaysia, you can still use your wallet from Indonesia, right? So basically what we have done is that Chris, right, in Indonesia, Pay Now in Singapore, Do It Now. I like that name. Mm-hmm. Do It Now in Malaysia, and PromptPay in Thailand, is that they are on global standards, right? So ISO standards, and so that these systems can talk to each other, right? And then so that if you have your dompet and you go to Singapore and you buy something in Singapore dollars, you can pay that, and then your rupiah in your wallet or your bank account will be deducted. So I think this is what is extremely promising and exciting, because as you know, we travel all the time, and that instead of using money, right? So I have rupiah, I go to Singapore, Changi Airport, I change my rupiah to Singapore dollars and I spend money. But now you don't have to do that. You just have your smartphone, your wallet, and then it can talk to other systems. So I think that's my last slide. So as you can see, e-money it's really exciting. Indonesia is a large market, right? You have 300 million people, large domestic market, and just e-money in Indonesia, you would have a huge impact, right? But then now you can step out of Indonesia and go to Thailand, which is the next biggest market, Malaysia, Singapore, etc., and still be able to use your e-money and spend and talk to each other as if you are in Jakarta, you're in Bali, right? But no, you're in Bangkok, you're in Phuket, right? You're in Singapore, you are in Penang, and you spend as if it is one large market. So I think that's extremely exciting. That's just one part, and then there's also DPT, right? Digital payment tokens, and then CBDC, CBDC, which is central bank digital currency, and all that, right, will just talk to each other. And for you, the customer, you'll just have one wallet, a single experience, and you can pay for your shopping, your dining and drinking through a single experience. So this is going to happen very, very soon. We're not talking about 5 years. Really, it's going to be like the next 12 to 18 months because the technology is moving so fast, and that the customer adoption is moving so much faster because as consumers, we are just hungry for better solutions and better experiences because the traditional banks are not meeting the customer expectations. Thank you very much. I'll be around for the breakout rooms for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Interesting, and I agree that they are very sensitive parts of this. I mean, even the security side of this is also interesting. But we'll discuss this later. In the interest of time, we need to switch to the other speaker. Oh, and also like that, you're right. Do it now. It's a nice phrase. Do it now. Yeah, do it. And then prompt pi, maybe it's Thailand, like prompt pi or something like that.
That's right. Yeah.
We should be sharing the same Chris, right? Because Chris in Singapore is also Chris, right?
Yeah, Chris,
so yeah. All of this is very much interesting, and then we'll just save the discussion for later. Joe, yes, stick around, please. Yes.
Thank you, Pak.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. So and also Mr. Pumpida and Dr. Ko is also still joining us in this session. So if we have time, I might also give the mic to Dr. Ko and Pak Pumpida after our third speaker. So now we have Nikhil Ratam. He's also from FDS Singapore. He's a principal training consultant. And Nikhil is also the founder and CEO of Kuditas Technologies. Okay, so and prior to that, he was managing director at Standard Chartered, and also working with global MNCs, advising and so on. So I'm sure his broad knowledge will provide us with good additional knowledge on digital banking, on fintech in general. Nikhil, you have again 10 minutes, and please start your presentation.
Thank you, and good morning to all of you. And it's really a pleasure to be on this panel and to talk to you about some of the trends that are happening in the market as well. I'm just going to share my screen. I've titled my section Crypto Driving Digitalization. And I wanted to basically talk about, where's the hype and what is actually happening out there, right? Does the hype match what the realities, on the ground? And when you hear about crypto, I think it's sometimes if you want to sound cool, you just hyphenate everything with crypto, right? Cryptocurrency, crypto trading, crypto exchange, and suddenly you're the cool kid on the block. But is it really all that hype, or is there really some substance behind it? So let's try to get into that, right? So today, there's about the total market cap of all digital assets globally is about $2.71 trillion US, right? You saw a huge spike in 2018, and it's been growing, thereafter, right? And just to put that in context, the whole foreign exchange market is about $5+ trillion, And the total assets under management of all the hedge funds that you can think of is about $3 trillion. So, the digital assets market as a whole is, very fast closing up to those, very large global markets as well. So there's some very serious money coming into digital assets. These digital assets are being traded around 427 plus crypto exchanges. I was just looking up this morning. It's not 15th October, but 6th November this morning. It's over $300 billion in transacted volume just yesterday. So these are large numbers, right? Countries are not sitting back. El Salvador on the 9th of June earlier this year basically made Bitcoin legal tender in El Salvador. So it's moving away from the realm of something very ephemeral in the digital internet online space to being something now very real, where people can actually use it as legal tender to buy, let's say, a bottle of Coke, right? And it's moving from being purely digital to the tokenizing of assets and real world assets into what is called non-fungible tokens. And the total transacted volume to date is about $10.9 billion, representing a market cap in terms of the appreciation of those assets to about $770 billion. So by no means is this a small market anymore, right? And it holds out a huge opportunity, especially for countries in the developing world, where we have a large unbanked sector, to almost leapfrog, and get into the financial services and gain financial services and become part of the formal economy, right? So what does this really mean, though? Where is this digitalization actually taking us? So Joe talked about e-money, and e-money is not something new, right? E-money came onto the frame when the first computer was used to basically record a general ledger. And then they started becoming a general ledger, e-money was created. You go into a bank teller, you deposit money, you give money to the teller, they make an entry into their bank's computer systems, and your notes and coins has been digitized, right, and made into electronic money, right? And so electronic money has been there for decades. But what's changed? What's changed really is the confluence of a couple of critical enabling technologies, right? So first of all, you've got cryptography, making things secure and or secure cryptographically. The second is looking at a new form of ledger keeping technology called blockchain or digital ledger technology. And when you bring these two together, along with the complete crash in prices of networking, hardware, and storage costs, you basically have a perfect storm of an environment to create what is now what we call cryptocurrencies, which essentially uses cryptography and cryptographic methods to encrypt how money is created, how money is actually transacted, right? And what they've done in this new technology is completely disintermediated all the banks or any third party. You can go peer-to-peer. Think about what PayPal is doing, right? Think about GPay. Think about having wallets. You don't need a bank to actually transact through these various wallets. But they've gone one step further than that. And they've said that, okay, how you even top up your wallets changes because the whole concept of an electronic wallet does not exist. Because if you own cryptocurrency, the record of all those cryptocurrencies that you hold is on the blockchain. So you conceivably don't even need an intermediary like a PayPal, like a GrabPay, or even a bank to hold your money anymore, right? Now, this is actually moving towards countries and central banks sitting up and saying, "Hey, hello, what's happening?" Right? Money. The way consumers are using money is evolving. The way money is being created is evolving, and rightly so. Governments and central banks are saying, what is happening over here? How do we control this? How do we ensure consumer protection? How do we ensure a level playing field? And they're coming out to saying that, okay, maybe we should get in on the game and issue our own cryptocurrencies. So you had physical notes and coins, which is then digitized and made into electronic money. And now central banks are saying, okay, what are we going to do with this electronic money? Let's create our own cryptocurrencies. And essentially, money as we know it, the electronic money as we know it, is also evolving to basically become central bank digital currencies. Now, what's really exciting as we move forward in this space is that there's this whole concept of smart contracts. And smart contracts essentially is code that lives, quote unquote, lives on the blockchain that can autonomously execute to ensure that contracts are enforced without the need of having a third party. So I don't need trust services. I don't need if I need to transfer funds, I really don't need an intermediary to make the funds transfer for me. But essentially, a smart contract properly encoded, would basically perform that service for me. So I don't need a third-party service provider. So seeing smart contracts get into the space of being used institutionally at an institutional level is going to, again, transform another step change in terms of how we disintermediate service providers. Where does this lead to then? You combine smart contracts with digital coins and digital currencies, and you get to the whole realm of what is called programmable money, which is basically money which has an embedded purpose in it. It's encoded as to how that money can be used. So think about, let's say, grant payments from the government, where the payments coming from the government can only be used to fund those particular grant or approved expenses. Today, if you receive funds from the government into your account or you get it as cash, it's fungible. It can be used for anything, right? And there's no audit trail behind it. But with programmable money, you basically create this whole framework wherein the use of the money can be actually encoded upfront. So what's limiting? I would say the only limiting factor in how programmable money will be used in the future is up to the creativity of the developers and the people who are building out new business models. So when you think about, and I talked about central bank digital currencies, what does that look like for us today? There are about 83 plus countries already planning to issue CBDCs. China is way ahead of the pack. They've already issued their digital yuan, and other countries are also piloting digital currencies. But in the next 3 to 5 years, I see countries going towards issuing their own digital currencies, and then over a 10-year period, you're going to have a time where digital currencies, CBDCs, and existing notes and coins and electronic money coexist. But really, that's really going to give way to CBDCs, because if countries have to compete with each other, I think it's going to be very difficult for them to do so without having a proper CBDC framework within their countries. Cross-border trade will be predicated on the use of this CBDCs, primarily because, to a point what Joe mentioned in the previous section, it's the costs, right? If you think of it today, 10-15% of all global trade goes in terms of costs. You're talking about trillions of dollars being paid away in terms of additional cost in terms of transactions. But if you take out all that cost, you're basically making your country's exports and imports all the more attractive to other countries. Your exporters can price competitively against another country that does not support a CBDC. So I would think that going forward, you'll see more and more countries adopting it and moving towards CBDCs as a requirement to ensure competitiveness of the economies of the global trade stage. Right? So what does this really mean for banks, though? Existing banks have it tough, I would say. I think Joe took a rather harsh view in the previous section, but I think it's both threats and opportunities. There was a study done by McKinsey about a year or 2 years ago, and it talked about the potential threats and opportunities. Right. So for traditional banks, the downside is probably a 35% hit to revenue if they don't do something and they don't transform and they don't evolve, right? But the upside, however, is a much bigger upside, a 45% upside in terms of revenue, right? But so this actually brings in a lot of questions for banks, saying that, okay, if we're really moving to digital currencies and digital currencies exist on a blockchain and the record of those transactions don't reside in my servers, in my e-banking platform, do I even provide a savings account? Do I even provide a current account? And if I don't provide a current account or a savings account, then what is the basis on which we offer services to customers, right? So the whole business model of banks is changing. The concept of the universal bank that was there for almost 20, 30 years, where a bank set up to be all things to all clients, right? That is now giving way to new business models. Banking as a service, embedded finance, wherein you're looking at embedding financial services into the customer journey or into the user journey as a seamless customer experience. Right? Think of it like this: you go into to check in for a hotel, you basically go in, you give your details, and then, oh, by the way, you have to present your credit card for payment. So that whole financial transaction is embedded into the check-in process and is a seamless user experience for the customer. So one can think of it in a lot of other use cases. Am I as a consumer looking to get a housing loan, or am I really looking to buy a house? If I'm looking to buy a house, should the whole mortgage loan processing be embedded into the real estate agent services to me as a customer, right? Should I really be worried about going and finding the best loan, right? So these are questions that banks have to ask. What does it mean for economies? Huge, massive. The biggest is the reduction across all the entire financial supply chain for all participants, right? So if you're taking out intermediaries, and Joe gave a good example of the cost of doing a cross-border transfer, but think of it extending every time you introduce an intermediary in a chain, or you will have to compensate them for the time and effort of whatever work they're doing, right? So if you take out all the intermediaries in that chain, then you take out all the costs, the fees that they're going to charge to you. If you take out intermediaries, you also reduce counterparty risk. So if you think about every transaction that is lending related or credit related, there's a risk premium attached to every single counterparty. So the cost in terms of margins, fees, is also going to reduce. And lastly, I think it creates a much greater access to liquidity, right? And financing due to better information flow and faster execution of transfers. Think of this: a Forex transaction, in the larger part of it is spot transactions. It's a 2-day turnaround. You need margin accounts. You've got cash stuck in margin accounts or collateral stuck in margin accounts. You're doing nothing, not earning anything, not being used productively, all because information cannot flow fast and transfers cannot be executed on a delivery versus payment method, right? So essentially what the whole digitalization of banking services affords at Economies and for the consumer is a huge cost reduction in terms of both transaction fees and margins, and also greater access to liquidity. Think of it this way: if it's a spot transaction takes 2 days to conclude, and I'm doing, let's say, $1 trillion, $1 trillion is tied up for 2 days. So if I could free it up, I could do 3 times that amount, right, over a 2-day period. I could do $3 trillion worth of transactions. So imagine what that would mean to the GDP of a country if you can do 3 times the amount of trade, than what can be afforded today, right? So with that, hopefully I've given you a framework within which for you to understand what I'm sure is going to be a huge information download to you this morning. And happy to take questions at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikhil. Thank you very much. Yes, it is true. It is a big, what do you call it? download of information for everybody. There's about 100 or so participants, Nikhil, and speakers. So we'll just give them time to absorb, and we'll go directly to the question and answer session because we have such limited time. Okay, so Bapak Ibu, I apologize for going a little bit beyond our time limit, but this is important, I believe. This is setting up our stage for the next sessions. I have I'm gonna Lillian, Dr. Kaur, Dr. Pompida, I'm going to save you for after we hear the questions and the discussions based on the discussions. At least now the organizer have given me 2 questions, and one is directed to Bernard, actually. Bernard, this is from Sehat Tanti. So it says, good morning, Mr. Bernard. I'm just going to read them to you because just hopefully to save time, and please provide a brief answer, Bernard, and please jump in at the others after Bernard's answers if you need to from your perspective, from your aspects, Nikhil and Joe. Yeah? So, Mr. Bernard, how are you? How do you see the digital banking in Indonesia? We are just starting, and this become hype of banking industry. Compared to Singapore and rest of the world, how long that this ecosystem will be mature enough since the technology advancement and telecommunication also become issues to be resolved in Indonesia. So please, Bernard, can you give us a little bit insight to answer that question from Ibu Tanti?
Thanks so much, Palacio. A very good question. I don't have the right answer, but from my perspective, in fact, the changes are moving very fast, and the fact that the central bank, Indonesia, has permitted the purchase of a bank by Shopee. That shows a lot about the commitment, and they recognize that there's a lot of values that all these tech companies, these big tech companies can bring to the ecosystem. And a lot of times the consumers are the ones that has been driving, asking banks to digitize, making banks put out more digital service out there to service their demands. So the fact, and then the government's actually opened up to that. In fact, it's even faster than Singapore from this perspective, because in Singapore, we just issued a license last year. They're coming next year, but the Central Bank of Indonesia has already taken a bold move to do that. And COVID itself has provided a lot of has made a lot of people recognize the importance of digitization. I guess there's 2 parts of the problems. The recognition is there by the financial institutions, the central bank. Another part of the problems, I guess, this question is asking is about the digital adoption of the users, and then connectivity, internet connectivity in the rural areas. I would think that the COVID situation in Indonesia has actually sparked a lot of conversations, and I think I saw from one recent report, the Minister of Health in Indonesia, I think, was actually talking about how digital technologies can help promote better healthcare delivery amidst all these adversities. So it has changed the government's mindset, not just a banking thing. Digitization, the importance of digitizations and good connectivity within Indonesia has been recognized, and that there's a huge urgency in the country to do that. It's not just for banking; it's for the survivors. It's about getting good and cheap medication or healthcare to the people in the rural areas when they don't have access readily to banks or clinics, etc. So there are many moving pieces right now. The government is very aligned that they recognize there is importance to digitize, not just for banking within Indonesia. They have accepted tech companies to come in to help banks, even transform banks, and then there's a leapfrog in this aspect. And they even plan out a longer term about open bigger initiatives like open banking in Indonesia. I saw a report by 2025. So all these are very big initiatives, and definitely internet connectivity will be the underlying crux to the success of open banking. Imagine, because all these are fundamental. So I would think that it won't take too long. With technology out there, as long as the consumers are aligned, the government is aligned, actually adoption is just a matter of time. And we should see some good results. Yeah, I hope I answered that question, Pak Lasio.
Well, in so many ways, and I'm happy to hear that. It's telling also me that Indonesia will be a big player in the digital banking landscape, I guess. Do you think so? And maybe others can also join in after Bernard. Is that the case? Indonesia being a big player in the digital banking?
Personally, I think there is a huge opportunity. In fact, a lot of fintechs did very well in Indonesia because it's the population it's a lot of underbanked. So the use case for big companies, tech companies, to go in and improve and reach out, like Gojek, to reach out to all the public is huge. There will be, I would think that the opportunity there for any fintech or digital banks or digital banking will be great. Especially when a lot of times they are new to internet connectivity, and one day they have internet, then they boom, they'll see all this e-commerce, everything. It'll be a very exciting space. Yeah, and in fact, one data that I've seen so far, there's a rise in digital adoption, but the Indonesians are the most those that adopted internet. They spend the most time in the world on internet, 6 to 9 hours a day. So it's beating those people we see in US. They're really big on the internet. So it's a big use case there.
And you can see even on Saturdays, we're all here listening to you.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah. And Bernard, I'm also happy that you mentioned about healthcare system, because that's the next series of our this next topic of our discussion series. And that's why it's here, because it has a big impact on the banking system, on the digital banking system, on the fintech, on a lot of areas. But I'm going to give the other speakers a chance to answer or to provide some comments. Please, Joe or Nikhil, do you have any additional comments?
Okay, couple of thoughts, right? See, I think the biggest advantage that Indonesia and a lot of other developing countries have is really to step away from thinking that the existing banks have to deliver these services, right? So if I go to, for example, Africa, look at some of the countries that the solutions that they've come up over there, right? The mobile telcos have actually rolled out digital wallets. You're going down to micro lending, micro deposits, all on the back of having a SIM card. So it really comes down to how do you want to approach this, right? Because if you look at the traditional banking model of, okay, I need to go and acquire a customer, I need to do a KYC setup, I need to get bank account opening forms and all these other things, it's never going to happen, right? Or it's going to take too long to happen. Right, and with the high level of mobile adoption in Indonesia is actually is in a perfect position to actually have that level of adoption into digital banking. The question is, really going to be about how many service providers are going to come out there to offer these kind of services. Obviously, having a progressive central bank and regulator is good. But really, are they delivering what consumers actually want and need, right? I think that's the bottom line in any of these business cases I've seen that are successful in large-scale adoptions of this at the grassroots levels, is are they embedding themselves into the customer's needs and providing last-mile solutions, which is, can they go and buy groceries with a digital wallet and with their mobile phone, for example? Can a worker, someone working in the city who's away from his family in the rural areas, transfer funds home to their families, right? These are use cases that need to be solved for, right? Else, the adoption is going to be very low. That's my view on that, and it'll be interesting to see, the providers who are coming out and the fintechs and financial services companies that are coming out to actually address this last mile issue.
And that is what.
If I may add, I think we're always thinking about from a bank's perspective, right? The traditional bank.
Correct.
They are a digital bank, an e-bank, a neobank, whatever you may call them, right? But I think it's upside down, right? The way we view it is that it's all about the customer.
Correct.
And you have to look at the customer, and the customer is in the center of the universe. It's about customer-centric or customer centricity, and looking at, and I think banks have always looked at the customer and looked at what kind of product do they want, whether it's a deposit, whether it's a loan, right? Whether it's payment, etc. But then the banks have always been limited or constrained by legacy systems, right? I've been in banking, as a consultant, right? Big banks in the US, right? That don't exist anymore, right? Bank One, right? PNC Bank, large banks that have now been acquired and have merged, and that until today, you look at any bank, whether it's DBS or BCA, is that they have legacy systems from 50 years ago. They have mainframes, right, on running IBM S30s, System 30s, core banking system, and they can't migrate to even client server and forget about blockchain, right, or cloud services, right, because they can't afford that switch from a legacy system, COBOL system, system 360, etc., and because it will disrupt their business, and it's too big a risk for these banks to take. And what do you get? Customers have poor service, customers have poor products, and customers have poor experiences, and customers are frustrated, right? And this is why it's created a vacuum that fintechs, right, whether you are payments, whether you're insurtech, whether you're wealth, right, is filling up that vacuum with new products and new services. Like, you're talking about Stashaway, and that because there's no bank that can offer you a savings of 3%, right? It's always 0.4, 0.5%, or 0.2, simply because of legacy systems, and because the cost of doing business is just so high, right? And I think you're going to start to see, let's look at the neighbors, right? Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, right? ASEAN 5. They're all, the central banks are very progressive. They're issuing, new banking licenses, they're digital banks, and that these banks are going to come and they're going to offer new products, new services, and that, and they're not shy about going out and finding partners, right? So, Grab, right? They will go out and partner with another fintech for new products and new services. And they don't partner, they'll just acquire, right? They have the money, and they have a big bank, right? Big part of funds, so billions of dollars, I'll just buy you out. And so very quickly, right, the customers are going to start to see that the new banks are really taking good care of them. They're really looking at my needs, right? Whether I'm a 20-year-old coming out of school, whether I'm 30 years old, with a new family and I want to buy a new house, or whether I'm 50 years old and I have a pot of money and I retire and I'm looking at annuities, right? What kind of products that you have for me? And this is the time that you will see, like I said, it's not 3 years, it's not 5 years, it's next 12 to 18 months that will start to see novel products and novel services, and that tailored for you, right? It's not just male, 30, married with 2 kids, right? It is actually for Pak Latio, right? And it's for you, a product of one. So if you think of Amazon, they always think about, we have a store for you, right? A store for one. This is what we're coming to, right? Banks have a product that's just for you, right? Because the next person, even though he looks like you, male, 30 years old, married with 2 kids, the product will be different. And that's what we're going to start to see, and we're going to see that very, very quickly.
Great, Joe. And this also comes back again to this, how centralized it is on the consumer side. And it's not just customers. I mean, customers are bank customers. We're also looking at the demand side in a whole, where not all has been captured by the traditional bankings, right? Because of collateral issues, because of information or issues, socialization of products, and also of access to banks, access to information technology, access to online banking and everything. So we're going to touch on that perhaps on a later stage, Joe. So I'm going to go next. I'm going to go next to the next question. This is from Ronald Caroline. I hope I pronounced that right, because it's Ronald and Caroline. So is it 2% or 1? This is to you, Joe, and I'm going to limit this just to you, Joe. If we talk about fintech, we have to consider the security side of that. Based on your point, how the security implementation that already implement compared to fintech in Indonesia and Singapore. So do that comparison. How is it the security based in Indonesia or in Singapore, the global ecosystem, if you may, Joe?
So I think that the underlying architecture is that we're moving away from legacy systems and we're moving towards smartphone and cloud services, right? So everything's in the cloud, everything's a web service, everything's a RESTful API. And that, so what does this mean, right? To the consumer, they don't really care. All they want is that I have a smartphone and I can bank. I can check my balances. I can, create a new loan. I can buy my new, motorbike, right? And pay off, my credit card. I can pay for my lunch, my nasi padang, right? Etc. And my table toll. So for them is that it's a mobile first, mobile only. That is the experience. And so then we open a whole can of worms around security. So the way that we change, and also a lot of startups, is that the security on the handphone is that there's no data there. So if you lose your smartphone, that's okay because there's no data. All the data is in the cloud, right? So that's one. So if the data is in the cloud, then the security has to be paramount. And how we have approached is that we don't try to lock up the cloud and say that no one's going to come in. So we always assume that, if someone wants to break into your house, they will break into your house, right? And no matter what kind of locks, what kind of windows, right, doors, right, they will find a way to break into your house if they really, really want to. So that's our premise, is that, if someone wants to break into our systems, they will. So what we then do is that we make sure that when you come into and you break into our computer systems, our servers, what you see is junk, right? Everything's, I would say, so there's data that's encrypted, and so you don't see clear text. So, I won't see, Pak Lastio's, KTP number and his bank balances, etc., right? But at the same time, to encrypt is computationally expensive, right? There's mathematical figures, large prime numbers that you have to calculate to encrypt. And so you don't have to encrypt everything, right? I don't have to encrypt the town, right? If you're in Jakarta, so what, right? Jakarta is a big city, 12 million people. They'll never know who you are, right? Okay, phone numbers, your street address, right? Postal code, I don't have to encrypt that. So there's certain things that you encrypt and certain things that you don't encrypt. And then you keep the keys safe. It's always, off the system. It's always cold, not on the servers. So that's our approach, is that if you're going to break into systems and break the change, I never say that, you know what, our systems are so locked up, no one's going to come in. If you say that, someone's going to say, some guy, right, some teenager in his mother's baby is going to, Mr. Joe, I'm going to break into your system. And you know what? They will do that.
They will do that.
They will do that, right? So if they come to your house, there's no money, right? It is somewhere locked up, and that you can come in and go through my house, whatever is there is used. You can have an apple, right? But you're not going to find jewelry. So that is how we've approached in terms of security. So we have the usual things like, capture, so that you can't do, dictionary attacks, right? We have 2FA, right? So if you have your name and password, they still need another device, right? Kind of thing. So that is our approach. And I think we've shared it with MES or other regulators, right? In the US, in Abu Dhabi, in the UK. They are still uncomfortable, but we describe the rationale behind it. And then with time, they say, okay, and then let's move on. So security is a very, very big thing because, we don't have a shop. We don't have branches, all over Jakarta or Medan or Bali. It's all a cloud service. It's all a smartphone. And then we secure that accordingly.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So I'm going to go to the final question, and it's, hopefully we can have a brief, and we can wrap up soon. Yeah, this question is for Nikhil. Nikhil, this is from Stephanus. Let me see what this is from. Stephanus Hanan. Yeah. So the question is, how do I, someone who is neutral, who does not wish to take position on a crypto movement, how do I ensure the stability of the purchasing power of my crypto in the real world? If I have $10 today, I know what a certain degree of certainty, how many cans of Cokes I can buy in a foreseeable future. If I have X in crypto value, how do I ensure I will be able to purchase something in the future that I can buy today? So please, Nikhil, just a brief answer to that, and we'll give the panel back to Pak Sulat. Thank you.
Sure. Go ahead. I think that there's some serious assumptions over there saying that US dollars are stable in terms of its value. If you hold a $10 US note in your wallet, Sephanas, next year it's not going to be worth $10. It's going to be $10 minus inflationary costs. Right, so inflation is going up by 1%. Your $10 is actually worth less than $10 the next year. And if that can of Coke goes up, your $10 is not going to buy you the same number of cans of Coke next year, right? So the key point over here is, and at the crux of your question really, is cryptocurrency a good store of value, right? And what asset is a good store of value? If I was to compare, let's say, cryptocurrencies to gold, so cryptocurrencies kicked off in a big way, in 2018, and before that in 2008, 2009 is when Bitcoin came in. And if I compare gold as an asset class to Bitcoin, gold has actually gone down 0.1%, right, in value, right? Versus Bitcoin obviously has gone up, but it's fluctuated a lot over that period of time, right? So the question over here is, what asset class is a good store of your value? Because you really don't want to have an asset or holding onto an asset, be it a currency or something else, that is going to be subject to forces that you don't know about, right? So the biggest force that could actually impact the value of your currency or the value of whatever you're holding, especially currencies, is the government. Because if the government goes and prints new notes, your currency is going to devalue, right? And that's what they did during the 2008 financial crisis, right? And which is what caused Bitcoin and Satoshi Nakamoto to come out with Bitcoin in the first place. If you were a holder of US dollars during that time, the US dollar government said, hold on a second, I'm just going to print a lot of notes. And, as far as the US is concerned, they don't care if you're holding their currency. But for everybody else outside the US, the dollars depreciated 30%, right, over a certain period of time, right? So the whole idea behind creating cryptocurrencies is not that the value does not fluctuate, but that the value will fluctuate based on market supply, market demand, right? And the investor's perception of how good that asset is as a store of value. It will not fluctuate based on some arbitrary central bank or an arbitrary third person coming and just increasing supply into the market, causing that asset to decrease. So anything in terms of any asset that you're holding, be it currency, a commodity, or cryptocurrencies, the value and how good a store of value it is dependent on the market and the perceptions of the market as to whether or not I should hold it. And that has existed from time immemorial, right? That is not going to change. So Bitcoin today and some of the cryptocurrencies fluctuate a lot to an extent because it's a new asset class. People don't quite understand it, right? If Elon Musk comes and says today, I'm not going to accept Bitcoin, it crashes. If he says tomorrow, I accept Dogecoin, Dogecoin goes up. So you see, a lot of trading happening on the Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies based on market sentiment. The reason why it fluctuates so hugely, right, and this is how governments control their currencies from fluctuating so hugely, is that cryptocurrencies are not subject to market manipulation in terms of its supply. So if I was, let's say, Indonesian central bank, and I see a sudden run on my money, and there's a sudden huge spike in the money that is going to cause, a huge demand with very limited supply, the central bank will increase supply to normalize the foreign exchange price. Those mechanisms to normalize price does not exist in the crypto space, primarily because it is designed to not allow that kind of supply increases. It's a very predetermined supply. Now, central bank digital currencies is a different matter, right? So governments say, no, we want to have control over this, right? But we want all the benefits that a blockchain-enabled cryptographic currency can give us. And so they're trying to merge the two, saying that, okay, we're going to have a central bank digital currency, which will basically have the benefits of both worlds, right? And so, as and when most CBDCs go out in this place, the rise and fall of a CBDC's value will be very similar to how forex markets trade today. Right. So hopefully I've explained that to you. And when you're thinking of these questions, think about store of value. Okay.
Sure. And that's going to be a big a discussion of its own, Nikhil. It's a big discussion on its own. So, but I'm sorry, but we have to wrap up. We've been too long going over our time limit. So before we send the mic to Pak Sulat, Dr. Ko and Dr. Pumpi, do you want to have a quick summary or a quick comment, 30 seconds, 1 minute before we wrap up this panel session? Dr. Ko?
All I want to say is stay tuned, keep learning. There's so much to find out.
True, very true. Dr. Pumpida, Pak Pumpida, do you?
Yeah, it's probably the same from me here.
Okay, great. So, thank you, everybody. This has been a great discussion. I apologize again for going beyond our limit, but time limit. But it's been a great discussion. A big round of Zoom applause for the three distinguished speakers, and to also Pak Pumpida and Nulidan, who's been in the session. Pak Sulat, I give the mic back to you. Pak Sulat, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Pak Sulat.
Baik, terima kasih Pak Lakyo atas panduannya dalam diskusi panel ini. Terima kasih juga kepada para speaker, Bernard Su, Chu Tausin, dan Nikhil Ratnam. Terima kasih banyak. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bapak, Ibu, dan rekan-rekan semua, waktu sudah yang menjadi keterbatasan kita. Webinar ini akan segera berakhir, tetapi nanti masih ada sesi foto bersama dan ngobrol interaktif dengan para narasumber. Berikut poin-poin penting yang disampaikan oleh keynote speaker dan para panelis. Pertama, mengenai digital banking oleh Bernard Su. Ada 4 alasan kenapa kemajuan digital banking sangat pesat. Pertama, mengenai AI, kemudian blockchain, dan juga mengenai data science. Kemudian ada perubahan perilaku konsumen, consumer behavior, misalnya ada online transaction ya, e-commerce, Amazon, WA, TikTok, dan lain-lain. Kemudian ada investasi yang besar di Fintech, sangat meningkat. Terkait dengan regulasi baru dan Fintech, ini sangat mendukung perkembangan Fintech, ya karena juga ada banyak regulasi baru yang muncul. Kemudian yang kedua mengenai digital payment oleh Chu Tausin. Permasalahannya adalah lambat, mahal, dan sulit. Kemudian ini bisa diberikan solusi dengan instant payment, gratis, sederhana, dan aman. Tetapi ada juga financial crime, money laundering, terorisme, hacking. Pembayaran di blockchain juga menyingkat jalur pembayaran. Kemudian digital currency, ada e-money, QRIS, digital currency, dan juga CBDC. Kemudian yang ketiga tentang kripto oleh Nikhil. Di cryptocurrency biasanya hanya untuk investasi, tetapi Bitcoin itu sudah menjadi legal tender di El Salvador. Ada juga 10,9 miliar dolar NFTs yang terjual dari market cap 769 miliar dolar. Baik, sekarang kita akan bergabung bersama di main room. Silahkan Indo.Events untuk memindahkan para narasumber ke main room. Pak Pambudi dari Indo.Events. Silahkan Pak.
Fintech is one of the fastest growing sectors of the modern economy, not just in Singapore but globally. It is recognized as a major factor in the fourth industrial revolution. And it will change the way we transact with one another without the need even for a central processing agent like banks. So Fintech is a combination of the words financial and technology. It involves the innovative use in the design and delivery of financial services and products. And this includes technology like blockchain, mobile internet banking, and it all can be transacted just through a phone. The education sector is a big market and ready for transformation, if not disruption. The increasing application of internet and mobile delivery systems, data analytics, AI, all these will radically transform the education landscape. Fintech demands a mix of skills that incorporates technology, financial services, innovation, and it has to be very customer-centric. Developing a competitive edge while industries are being disrupted, jobs automated, will be a challenge if we do not keep up with the times. In education, as we prepare our students to be future-ready, educators must be cognizant of how technology is transforming the world. Otherwise, we will fall behind. Let's build a seamless learning environment that provides the nexus between theory and practice for engaging our learners, as well as to prepare them to be future ready. If you want to learn more about Fintech,
Sign up at Fintech Academy.
Halo, berjumpa lagi kita di sini. Bapak, Ibu, dan rekan-rekan semua, sebelum memulai ngobrol-ngobrol santai dengan para narasumber, kita akan berfoto bersama. Silahkan Mbak Intan dan Mbak Esta untuk memulainya.
Terima kasih Pak Sulat. Selamat siang Bapak Ibu peserta webinar. Sebentar lagi Mbak Esta akan mengambil foto kita. Kita akan foto bersama para narasumber. Untuk itu kami mohon kamera untuk dibuka. Kami persilahkan Mbak Esta untuk memulai. Silahkan Mbak Esta.
Terima kasih Bu Intan, Bapak dan Ibu. Sesi foto kali ini saya akan mengambil sebanyak 4 kali. Bagi yang sekali lagi saya ingatkan, bagi yang belum membuka kamera dimohon untuk segera membuka. Terima kasih. Kita mulai dari tag pertama, 1, 2, 3. Oke. Tag kedua, 1, 2, 3. Tag ketiga, 1, 2, 3. Oke, terakhir ya, 1, 2, 3. Terima kasih Bapak Ibu atas waktunya. Saya kembalikan lagi kepada Pak Sulat.
Baik, terima kasih Mbak Intan dan Mbak Ista. Bapak, Ibu, dan rekan-rekan semua, ada beberapa pertanyaan yang belum dijawab, nanti mungkin bisa disampaikan di forum ini. Ya, silahkan juga untuk memberi tanda raise hand di profil Anda atau mengangkat tangan Anda. Silahkan bertanya dalam bahasa Inggris, bahasa Indonesia, atau campur-campur juga nggak apa-apa ya. Kita santai saja di sini.
Bahasa Jawa, bahasa Sunda juga bisa Pak Sulat.
Silakan.
Pak Sulat, tolong kasih apresiasi untuk Maura. Tadi pasti dia ini banget itu.
Oh iya, Maura luar biasa ya.
Keren.
Live
translation-nya. Silakan Bapak-bapak, Ibu-ibu langsung aja bertanya nih, live ngomong. Biar pakai bahasa Inggris, silakan. Atau
bisa dibacakan yang belum dijawab Pak Lestio.
Aduh, saya nggak punya ininya. Coba silakan ya Pak Sulat. Mungkin mana ini tulisnya tadi.
Sebentar. Ada yang mau bertanya, Bapak Ibu? Atau mau menanyakan hal-hal lain, silahkan ya. Tidak terkait topik juga nggak apa-apa.
Just one question from me to Joe, actually. Joe, how are you related to Marina Tusin?
She's my mother.
Ah, see,
Yeah.
I asked Lillian about it, but she doesn't know. Yeah. So you're actually the nephew of Gita Wirjawan, yeah?
Okay. No. Yeah, am I? Okay, I guess so.
Right. So okay,
It's a small
Gita is a good friend of mine, yeah, and also Maman is a good friend of mine also.
Okay. Wow, we should let's connect
Yeah,
and yeah, absolutely.
Sure. We'll catch up
Thank you.
sometime. Yeah.
Thank you.
Ada pertanyaan ini tadi dari saudari atau Ibu Yanti Ratnasari dari Next Fintech ya.
Mbak Yanti mau menyampaikan langsung nggak atau dibacakan?
Ya, silakan.
Mbak Yanti. Bacakan aja mungkin Pak Susan.
Ya, boleh dibacakan aja.
Oke.
Gitu. Oh, ada Mbak Yanti, padahal Mbak Yanti ngomong aja Mbak.
Kita unmute sendiri.
Oke. Boleh ya. Jadi
Monggo, Pak.
ya, selamat siang semuanya ya. Saya ingin menanyakan bagaimana perkembangan ataupun legislasi ya Indonesia sendiri terkait dengan fintech ini. Karena ada beberapa fintech ada begitu banyak jenis ya. Salah satunya juga termasuk selain dari tadi digital bank, kripto dan lain-lain, ada juga ini ada permintaan start my video. Oke. Ada juga mungkin yang saya mau tanyakan juga terkait untuk semacam financial planner ya, di mana dalam hal ini berarti kan kemungkinan ada penghimpunan dana. Kalau yang sampai tahun kemarin saya sempat tanyakan itu masih secara undang-undang masih belum bisa. Dalam artian di sini financial planner adalah di mana kita memang menghimpun dana dari klien-klien yang memang kemudian kita yang akan menjadi plannernya untuk mendistribusikan dana tersebut. Terima kasih.
Pak Sulat, apakah saya terjemahkan dikit aja mungkin ya biar speakers kita juga paham, dan tapi pertanyaan ini lebih banyak tentang regulasi Indonesia nih, mungkin Pak Sulat nanti bisa ikut nimbrung ya. Joe, Dr. Ko and Nikhil, Bernard, the question is more on how the regulations in Indonesia are going at this point, because there's a lot of different fintech types, there's a lot of fintech mechanisms that are in Indonesia, and we need to know how the regulations are. There are already some regulations out, but not all. What do you think about that? And also she asked about the financing planner. Mbak Yanti nanti silakan di-clarify kalau saya salah ya, tapi financial planner itu bagaimana nanti ke depannya terkait dengan ini semua? Pak Sulat mungkin yang bisa menangkap juga ada kaitan regulasi kita, Pak Sulat, atau
Ya, nanti saya tambahin juga Pak Yongki.
oh, Pak Pumpi, monggo. Atau langsung Pak Pumpi.
Ya, Bu Yanti, sebetulnya kalau di Indonesia ini kita ini agak sedikit kecepatan dalam konteks implementasinya, regulasinya nyusul. Nah ini yang menurut saya agak berbahaya gitu sebetulnya, karena seharusnya kan terbalik ya, di mana-mana regulasinya ada. Makanya kita tuh benar-benar sangat disrupted kalau terjadi implementasi seperti itu gitu. Jadi pasti nanti adjustment di dalam konteks regulasinya keteter banget. Nah gitu. Jadi kalau dalam hal financial planner yang saya sudah tahu nanti akan ada sertifikasinya itu Bu. Jadi nggak sembarangan orang bisa declare bahwa dia financial planner. Dan kalau memang ada pengumpulan dana pasti harus ada izin dari OJK. Dan misalnya ada rekomendasi dari asosiasi fintech yang ada seperti itu. Jadi itu mungkin komentar dari saya. Tapi masalah regulasi memang selalu keteter kita. Di situ aja.
Oke, saya tambah sedikit ya. Jadi kalau di Indonesia memang paling banyak fintech itu peer-to-peer lending. Nah regulasinya itu sudah banyak ya. Kemudian terakhir karena banyak kejadian, maka Pak Jokowi juga memerintahkan untuk lebih selektif ya di dalam memberikan izin kepada peer-to-peer lending. Dan memang yang belum mendapat izin dari OJK itu banyak sekali. Ya. Kemudian terkait dengan financial planner, nah di pasar modal menurut OJK atau peraturan yang diterbitkan oleh OJK itu sebetulnya kalau hanya memberikan investasi itu ada izin investasi. Jadi si financial planner-nya mesti punya izin sebagai penasihat investasi. Kemudian kalau mereka mengumpulkan dana kemudian mengelolanya, mereka harus punya izin wakil manajer. Ya, yang ini yang sedang akan dikeluarkan juga gitu ya peraturannya supaya konsumen itu terproteksi. Ya, saya kira itu saja Pak Lasio komentar dari saya.
Terima kasih Pak Sulat, Pak Pumpi. Bu Yanti ada kelanjutan mungkin ada atau enggak, kita akan geser ke pertanyaan yang lain atau bagaimana Pak Sulat? Ada pertanyaan yang lain, sudah siap?
I can add to that. I can add that.
Oh yeah, please. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to add very quickly that we do have RegTech workshops where we conduct together, even for regulators as well. So if you want a discussion in that aspect, we can arrange for a workshop just to discuss on regulations and all these issues that we are discussing just now. All right. So yeah, that will be for our next workshop. Thank you.
Actually, ya mungkin di sini sekalian disampaikan juga ke sama teman-teman bahwa ini semua ini memang kita sedang underground-kan ya ke Indonesia, ke sistem Indonesia. Jadi semua yang ilmu-ilmu yang ada di FTA Singapura, pengalaman-pengalaman dari teman-teman di FTA dan dari global counterparts itu akan kita himpun dan kita jadikan lebih Indonesia. Maksudnya ada konteks Indonesianya, konteks Indonesianya, termasuk modul-modulnya. Nanti bukan next step lah, kita akan ceritakan dalam seri-seri webinar berikutnya sama workshop atau berikutnya yang kita susun setelah webinar ini ya, setelah seri webinar ini. Silakan Pak Sulat, mungkin ada pertanyaan lagi. Oh.
Ada pertanyaan dari Pak Kusentono Halim, ya ini mengenai peer-to-peer lending. Ya, apakah peer-to-peer lending itu juga merupakan fintech terbesar di Singapura? Dan kemudian berapa NPL-nya, non-performing loan-nya seperti apa?
Anybody want to answer, Joe, Nikhil, or Bernard? That's a straightforward question. Is peer-to-peer lending also big in Singapore, and what percentage is the NPL?
No, I don't think we have information in terms of the actual lending book sizes, right?
Nikhil, you're laughing because of the NPL is so high, or what?
No, I think it's too new to start to talk about NPLs. Right. The reason I say that is this. If you look at traditional bank credit process and lending assessments, right, the bank's typical traditional credit assessment, most companies would never get a loan, or it'll probably take about 10 months to get a loan, right, at the minimum, right, before all the loan documentation is done. Whereas if you look at today, the peer-to-peer lending platforms, what they're actually bringing in is the innovation that they're bringing into the space is a new credit scoring models, right? Based on machine learning, based on artificial intelligence, looking at other data points other than just purely the documentation and financial statements that are being provided, right? So I would say a large portion of that is not tested, right? But how are they reducing risk? The risk is being reduced because they're not financing long-term, right? They're doing very short-term loans, right? Working capital, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 months, right? And they're not going very long-term. So there is a level of protection built into the fact that you're not doing a very long-term loan. The moment you go into 1 year loan or 18 months, 12 months, or even kind of project financing, that has not taken off because the credit scoring models don't support that as yet. So we'll have to test those credit scoring models, right? But to the extent that they are actually being able to, within, you sign on within a minute of posting all your documentation, they'll give you a yes or no, whether or not they can lend you. That in itself is a huge, huge benefit to a lot of SMEs who need access to, let's say, 10-day working capital, to fund their payables over a 10-day period, right? Where they have working capital gaps in their process. Certainly now with COVID, what has happened, you've seen an increase in that, is that supply chains have been stretched. So, when supply chains are stretched, what happens is, either your suppliers are asking you for advance payments, your customers are delaying their payments, and so you're stuck in the middle and you need to finance that gap, right? So, but those gaps typically tend to be anywhere from 10 days to 45 days, at the most 60 days, right? And that's where you've seen a growth in peer-to-peer lending in the SME space to finance those. So those are relatively less risky than doing a longer-term financial lending. So I would say, yes, there is a growth in a very big way. What is the exact loan assets? We don't have data on that at this point in time. But I would be surprised to see if the NPLs are high at this point in time, because you're seeing them rotate that line. So they're going to very quickly drop off an NPL because you're within a 15-day to 60-day cycle, and those guys will get blacklisted very fast, right? So typically, the SMEs accessing these kind of facilities on the P2P lending space are not really, the default rates would be, I would be surprised if it's very high. It's going to be probably very low, just due to the nature of the kind of loans that are being structured.
There was just to note that there was no translation for this in Bahasa Indonesia, so hopefully people in the audience can still capture it. But it's intentional because we want this session to be very fluid. People will be encouraged to speak in English. You, Nikhil, and Joe or Bernard will be encouraged to speak in Bahasa if you want to.
Next session.
Next session. Okay. Anybody want to add to that or comment on that before we go to our next question? Pak Sulat is selecting the questions.
Ya, nambah sedikit ya mengenai peer-to-peer lending. Kenapa besar sekali di Indonesia? Karena ini short term ya, jangka pendek, harian atau bulanan. Kemudian banyak orang di Indonesia itu butuh uang ya datang ya, sehingga mereka akan pinjam uang di fintech, dan itu banyak sekali ya, ratusan ribuan orang, sehingga sangat meningkat. Nah, problemnya ketika mereka tidak bisa membayar utangnya, mereka akan membuka rekening di fintech lainnya, sehingga satu orang bisa mempunyai beberapa akun fintech, ya, peer-to-peer lending. So one person in Indonesia can have more than 5. I found that ada juga yang more than 40 account. That's easy in Indonesia ya, because mereka kemudian harus gali lubang, tutup lubang ya. Mungkin itu saja tambah sedikit. Pada kenyataannya di Indonesia banyak masalah, kemudian juga banyak debt collector yang kurang etis begitu ya, yang kemudian membuat hidup para debiturnya ini lebih sengsara lagi. Baik, untuk pertanyaan selanjutnya mungkin ada dari para peserta yang akan mengajukan pertanyaan langsung.
Silakan loh, pakai bahasa apapun, kita semua di sini peserta.
Ya, kalau ada yang nanti ingat pada saat itu bisa dikirim di grup WA juga, nanti kita bisa langsung forward ke para pembicaranya sebetulnya.
Ya. Betul. Jadi silakan, kesempatan ini mungkin masih tinggal berapa, 10 menit lagi kali ya Pak Sulat ya?
Iya.
Silakan.
Bentar lagi kita tutup. Ada yang mau bertanya?
Saya kira cukup ya Pak Sulat ya.
Ya, mungkin udah cukup berarti.
Oh ini ada yang bertanya lagi tadi, Bu Yanti ya, sedikit ya. Menginformasikan bahwa untuk financial planner dengan pengumpulan dana dari klien harus mendapatkan izin dari OJK ya. Oh, taksi itu tadi ya. Jadi OJK itu memberikan izin kepada WMI, Wakil Manajer Investasi. Jadi financial planner itu seperti manajer investasi, investment manager, yang kemudian mereka mengumpulkan dana dari klien, kemudian diinvestasikan. Ya, jadi harus memiliki izin sebagai WMI, Wakil Manajer Investasi. Ya, itu saja. Terima kasih Pak Lasio. Mungkin apakah sudah cukup ini?
Kembalikan ke peserta, apa teman-teman yang lain nih? Kalau memang sudah cukup, tidak ada yang ingin ditanyakan lagi, mumpung ada sesi networking atau sesi informal ini. Ya, kita kembalikan. Kembalikan Pak Sulat untuk ditutup.
Mungkin ada yang mau minta tanda tangannya Dr. Lilian Ko atau pembicara yang lain, itu bisa diminta.
Gimana caranya?
Oke. Ya sudah, mungkin Dr. Lilian sebagai apa? Mungkin pengantar terakhir bisa tuh. Katanya dia minta waktu. Dr. Lilian, you want to say something before Pak Sulat closes this?
I'm good. I've said it. Thank you so much. We love this partnership. Let's carry on. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Keep learning.
Ya. Oke, baik. Terima kasih kami ucapkan kepada para narasumber dan peserta semuanya. Mohon maaf kalau ada kekurangan dalam penyelenggaraan webinar ini. Sampai jumpa pada acara webinar selanjutnya, yaitu Fintech in Healthcare tanggal 20 November 2021. Kemudian Environmental, Social, and Governance atau ESG itu 4 Desember 2021. Kemudian Future of Fintech 11 Desember 2021. Terima kasih banyak. Sekali lagi kami ucapkan kepada narasumber dan para peserta. Sampai jumpa pada webinar selanjutnya. Salam sehat. Ya, bye-bye. Dadah.
Terima kasih semua.
Terima kasih.
Terima kasih semua. Thank
Terima
you,
kasih.
Dr.
Salam
Ko,
sehat.
Terima kasih.
Nikil, Rata. Terima kasih peserta.
Terima kasih semua.
Mbak
Thank you
Yanti,
everyone.
Terima kasih.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good weekend all.
Halo.
Great weekend to
Bu
everybody.
Marlina.
Halo
Terima
Mbak.
kasih.
Ya, makasih
Terima
ya.
kasih.
Marina nggak tanya tadi.
Tadi mau tanya, tapi terkagum-kagum. Pembicaranya bagus-bagus, terus ganteng-ganteng, cantik-cantik.
Nggak apa-apa, kita juga harus jadi kagum sama diri kita sendiri. Ngomong dong.
Nanti yang berikutnya ya Pak Lastio ya.
Ya, oke. Yang lainnya juga tuh nih ada beberapa yang mungkin Pak Yudi ya Pak. Banyak nih teman-teman seharusnya.
Pak Rusli. Ada Pak
Sehat
Rusli.
nanti, pertanyaannya bagus Bu, sehat nanti. Lain kali sampaikan secara langsung ya Bu.
Ya.
Thank you everybody.
Thank you ya.
Thank you, Pak
Pamit
Solan.
ya.
Terima kasih Pak Niko.
Terima kasih
Bang
Bu
Jan.
Natali.
Dadah. Iya.
Bu Intan. Sampai
Iya,
ketemu lagi ya.
sama-sama.
Menyelenggarakan webinar ini kita dengan Zoom. Silakan Indo.Events untuk menutup Zoom-nya.
Siap,
Terima kasih.
kami akan
Terima
close
kasih
dulu.
Mas
kasih, Mas Pram.
Mas Budi,
Dah,
Mas Devan, Indo-Event semua.
we will close this room.